local can deliver better than especially oil and gas and exploration, but certainly branch plants and non-local community businesses or larger businesses. The other thing I talked about Thursday night that I want to elaborate a bit on in terms of well-being is why people locate in communities. And again, this is tying into that myth that taxes have to be low, but the data shows that well-being is a fundamental thing that attracts people to the community. But here's a list that came out of one study of the qualifications, the qualities in a community that attract and retain people. The available workforce, so people being healthy, trained, and I'm not talking about trained in construction to build oil and gas, but trained in areas that support their local economy, whether that's agriculture and food production, ecotourism, conservation, monitoring, or harvesting, or guiding, like whatever those pieces are, that there's available healthy workers with housing, access to health services, and appropriate education in the areas they're interested in. And I know that Chief Erasmus mentioned this, that doesn't always mean a university or college education, but the skills and training and recognition of skills. So the education system, the social services, the cultural connectedness, social cohesion, family cohesion, and the environment. So recognizing that the qualities that attract people to a local economy aren't just low taxes, and that the government, if a government is keeping taxes too low to invest adequately in these things in local communities, then they're actually compromising local economic development for a low tax regime to attract foreign import investors. And that playing field needs to be adjusted such that they are adequately taxing in order to invest, because we've seen that for $1 the government invests in those local economies in any of these areas, it's going to return more than double for economic development. So it makes sense, and there's really good literature out there on what you get if you leave the money in the hands of the folks you're not taxing, especially if it's at the high end or it's in business. Their propensity to spend it, the marginal propensity to spend it, is lower than if you tax them and put that money in the hands of a person in the local economy. And that's what France's data was, is that person in the local economy is probably going to spend almost all of their income instead of, some of it's not going to go to a condo in Hawaii probably. It's probably going to go on haircuts and winter jackets for their kids. And if you leave it in the hands of mostly foreign corporations or wealthy, a lot of it's going to leave the province or go into savings and debt payments, and much less of it's going to get spent on goods and services locally that stimulate jobs. So there's a really good argument for ensuring that the government's maximizing revenues and investing that in these areas in smaller and local economies around the NWT. Now I want to turn to the issue of governance. The other thing about the economy that's important when we flip conversations on its head is economists. Now, when I'm slagging economists, I'm actually not an economist, I'm a political economist. And there are some great economists out there. My husband's one of them. So when I'm criticizing economists, I'm criticizing mainstream economic thought. There's some really amazing progressive economists. Fewer and fewer every day, because right-wing conservative movements have taken over university economic programs and are in control of hiring processes and what's being taught on campus. But there are still some amazing progressive economists around. But there has been this stream of thought in mainstream economics where the economy is separate and fundamental. And government is over here kind of an annoying outside player that distorts the economy. So there's this thought that the economy exists as a being of its own, and government interferes in it. And that's part of what we have to do, is flip that on its head and say, there is no economy without governance. And we can look at failed states in places like Africa or parts of Mexico where drug cartels are in charge. I mean, without good governance, you don't have an economy. We know that. And I know that there was a bit of a conversation last night about throwing out red tape. It's a bit of a right-wing meme that we need to get rid of red tape. But policies exist because it's not easy to get policy passed. getting policy made is hard. It takes a long time, lots of effort to draft policy. Policies, for the most part, exist for a reason. Now, it might be that those policy instruments need to be changed because they were oriented towards perhaps smokestack chasing instead of economic gardening, that we need to tweak policies, that we need to reorient them to stimulate local rather than imports. For example, with some of the agricultural food subsidy programs, so that before there's an export subsidy on imports, that local food production is well supported. So there need to be maybe tweaked, but we can't talk about getting rid of red tape because we do want to protect people from having their home boiler blow up. And so we need to talk about, the conversation needs to be a bit more sophisticated than that, a conversation about how do we reorient policy. It's not about red tape that gets in the way of work, it's about how do we structure those policies and those instruments to protect people and support well-being and harness revenues and resources to grow our local economies. So we just need to make sure that we do have that as a, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and try and get rid of government here. Let's talk about good governance, stewardship, economic gardening. I know in this survey there was a bunch of gaps identified in the, that were sort of challenges for the local economy. Childcare, housing, support for innovation. So people in this conference often have identified difficulties accessing resources. For example, France, being a cooperative, couldn't access some of the resources that were needed as startup costs. So support for innovation, looking at making sure we're supporting creative models for growing businesses and nonprofits and cooperatives and community share ownership. Collaboration among service providers, poverty, hunger, housing, and the high cost of living. So these aren't about necessarily the wrong policies, but this is about having the right types of programs in place. So this is about making sure we have the architecture and social infrastructure needed so that those economies will grow. And if we put those pieces in place, there's amazing entrepreneurship, local ingenuity, capacity, resources at the local level, and we'll hear on these panels about examples where people are already really doing innovative work to build local economies.
Can I just ask you a question of clarification? What survey?
The survey that was done by Dennis Bevington and Bob Bromley, and there's copies of it on the table back there. Prior to this conference, they did a survey looking at local economies, and if you haven't seen it, you should look at it, that asked people about priorities, interests, what they're doing, and some of the barriers and challenges they're experiencing. And these were some of the things that people identified as challenges on a go forward in building their local economies. And I know we've heard about lots more during this conference, and we'll hear about more on these panels. But today is also about recognition that there's amazing things already happening, and it's about making sure that the architecture is there to keep that flourishing and learn off of each other's examples of what's successful and lessons learned. Thank you. Now we're going to have the next panel, if we can invite folks to come up. Did you want to do this, Lois, or?
You can go right ahead. Great, thank you.
So we've got, I don't know if I got the latest version, but Chief Leonard Kenny, I've got an old version.
You're fired.
But don't go there.
Mine's on my laptop, so I got the latest for the old version off the front hand. It's obviously out of date.
We have Mayor Mark Hyde from Yellowknife. We have Arthur Toback from Fort Coteau with the business arm of Yellowknife Land Corporation. We're going to have via Skype Mayor Andrew Cassidy from Hay River. And I haven't asked Danny Bea officially, but I'm hoping Danny Bea from the Delaunay Land Corporation would come and join us, because You know, he can roll this stuff off like in his sleep. So, yeah, so, because I know, you know, Delaunay's been doing this stuff for so long. We need to recognize these folks and hear their story. So we've got 4 amazing speakers. Now the order, I understand that there's a demand for Arthur Toback to go first because a request. Thank you, Diana. A request for Arthur to go first because somebody has to leave, and their day is going to be ruined if they don't hear from Arthur. So I think Arthur's going first, and then I don't know about the technology, but it sounds like Andrew Cassidy's going to be online. Hey, there he is. So Andrew, I'm so happy to see you. So you'll be coming up after Arthur, and then Mark and Danny. Does that all work? Okay, take it away, Arthur.
I need Joanne to give me a hand here. He's going to be using the PowerPoint online. Giving me a hand. Is there a way to have him sit right over here because I'm going to be flipping? I need him to see which one is
It's good to have a technical advisor on your side. You can just switch chairs, sit over there. Yeah, that'll work. I think you can sit beside each other, and you can get close to this mic so it really does
That's
work.
all right. You don't need to get too close. Just much better. I just,
Okay. So.
He's going to sit there. Yeah, it's okay. Just angle it back towards him.
So, because there's a bunch of old folks that can't hear very well in this room, maybe you could really lean into the mic.
She doesn't know what it's like. She hasn't been next.
Yes, I want to be using it. Hello. Hello.
Yep.
Check. Yeah. Good morning. My name is Arthur Toback, and I'm business manager for Narraton Developments, which is the business arm for Yamoga Land Corporation. I wanted to speak on a number of items. One would be the role of the Yamoga Land Corporation, local food processing, and the use of renewable energy technologies, as well as small business development. But I will be speaking on another number of items, but I wanted to relate to people that when I was requested to present here, the items that I was asked to present and the way it was put to me was kind of broad, because I'm not sure how much of you here know how land corporations operate, or under what criteria they operate under. And those were one of the questions that I had, because in order to understand the smaller communities and how they function and how they get by, the land corporations play a real major role in this, so much so that, this is where the community comes to most of the time. So they have to operate through a process, and government as well as the leaders have to agree on a process. And so the land corporation, their role is to implement the objectives listed within the Sahtu Dene Métis Comprehensive Land Claims Agreement. And there are probably 29 chapters in the land claims agreement that the land corporations have to work under. And their functions are many, their roles are many, and this is not one area. Anytime there's activity being proposed outside of the community on lands that are considered traditional, they have to negotiate access and benefits agreements that are going to be agreed to by their people. And so those are the things that they already have in place. And sometimes the benefits have to be gotten through A and B agreements. Sometimes it's business, sometimes employment. And many times it is training as well too. So those are areas that they sometimes have to work under. But for this building localized economies, I'm just going to be concentrating on two for now. One is the permitted activities under Chapter 11. It's not titled permitted activities, it's under taxation, but permitted activities under that Chapter 11. And there are a number of items that are listed under the Chapter 11. One is education and training. Programs such as child care, hospital construction, alcohol and drug abuse programs, etc. Loans and grants to low-income beneficiaries. Housing for low-income beneficiaries. Public service such as utility service or transportation. Heritage programs. Harvesting and cultural activities. Recreational facilities. Elders assistance. Now, the Imoga Land Corporation uses Chapter 11 as a sort of a guide towards assisting beneficiaries that are listed on their beneficiary list. And most of the communities are already on their list. Both the BAN and Imoga lists are probably pretty much the same. And they interact and do various functions, but they sometimes combine their efforts when it comes to helping the community. Now, I wanted to just speak on this particular board and president because their term is for 3 years and they have their own plans, they have their own priorities, and so they pass them on to their staff, or else they start trying to speak to people, and this is what comes out of these gatherings. Sometimes the community gets together, when there's an assembly, everybody speaks on what should be the priority and everything else, but at the end, it's up to the president and the board to come up with their priorities and their list as well. And this is where the permitted activities come out. The other chapter that I want to speak on is the economic measures, because that is another important item that we use in our function as a government within the community. Because down the line, all that we're talking about under Chapter 11, under Chapter 12, these are functions of government, or roles that the Imoga Land Corporation is going to undertake on behalf of its people, and it is at times considered functions of government. You heard me speak about education, housing, all that sort of stuff is, well, the GNWT does that, some of that, the federal government do some of that prior to the evolution, but these are functions of government, and the Sahtu communities are moving towards self-government. You know that Delaney is already pretty much completed, but we haven't got to that stage just yet. So, but I've listed what economic measures are under Chapter 12, and it says, government is committed to helping promote and sustain the Sahtu economy, and to help the Sahtu Dene and Métis become economically self-sufficient. In the Land Claims Agreement, economic measures are steps taken to make sure the Sahtu economy is strengthened. Under these two chapters, we sometimes have to move, and it's not always clear to everybody how we do things. And that's why I'm kind of like, this question was so broad as to how I was going to present the role that the Imoga Land Corporation plays in the community. One thing I do have to mention is that, and that's why I'm kind of unsure about how much time I'm going to actually take, so I've been stressing out about that.
I'll be waving at you.
Okay, you gotta sit out here. See you later.
Okay.
Anyways, back in 2012, not too long after the current board and president were elected, we suggested to them that they should, it'd be a really good idea to do an economic forum. In that economic forum, we invited industry, oil and gas, mines and minerals. We had the government departments in there as well, ITI, ENR. We had other community representatives. And we had the elders and the youth involved in the economic forum because everybody had to be involved. Otherwise, it would not be a clear picture of where we had to go. Now, many things came out of that economic forum and must have went on for maybe three days. But a lot of information, good information came out of it. One of them is that there was some activity, oil and gas, but it was just, just sporadic. And it wasn't something that we could rely on indefinitely. Even the oil and gas companies were telling us that they had no plans to access their exploration licenses on the certain areas of land, that they wouldn't commit to actually doing a plan. And so that sort of told us that what might be down the line would be there would be no oil and gas activity at some point in time. The other things was that there was barriers towards getting our people employed, and one of them was education and training, and that was a major thing that we learned at that economic forum. And so that made us put one of the priorities on traditional economy. Now, traditional economy, we knew was going to be a viable economy. It still had some strength in it. Although there were some weaknesses in it, we needed to identify those weaknesses and to try to do something about them. Many things that were considered barriers were sort of noted down and prioritized, but one of the things that always came about from the land corporations was that we should always concentrate on the family unit. The homes and the family units are what should be a priority, not individuals, not companies, not businesses. They're there to assist their people, move their people ahead economically, if that's what it takes. And so such stuff as the high cost of living was a major issue for many of our people. The stores brought in food, the very high prices. Families that had young children were spending most of their income towards the stores and buying these expensive things that we figured could be gotten right from the land. And at the time it was being done, but not in a way that we could actually improve upon. Another area that was of concern was the high price of fuel. Even the year before, they had to actually fly in, I don't know how many plane loads of fuel because the barge didn't make it down to Good Hope with the fuel. And again, last year, the barge didn't make it with our other shipment of goods that we needed. And so you can see, you can even picture what the small communities are faced with. Lack of infrastructure, such as transportation, is a major one. Now, in their role as the entity that acts on their behalf, the Land Corporation, on behalf of its members, sometimes funds programs and services, but it has to flow the money to organizations that can actually already have the existing programs or can create it. The land corporations are a non-profit corporation, so they can't undertake these programs themselves. And so once the decision is made and the funds are transferred, it either goes to NDL. In my case, I'm the manager of NDL, but I'm the business manager. As businesses, we tend to operate in that same fashion. We operate under business rules. And so that's the criteria that I work under. But there's other organizations such as the Renewable Resource Council, which also does activities that the Land Corporation believes should be enhanced or supported. The Kashuut and Charter Community Council is another area, as well as the schools. So all of these things, all of these organizations receive some funding in one way or another from Yamul Land Corporation. But for this purpose of this building local economies, I'm just going to concentrate on three categories. One is the local food processing, renewable energy technologies, and the small business development.
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay, speed it up here. Under the forum, there was another items that we did partner up with ITI with, and one of them is that the local food processing needed a way to store and to preserve food as long as possible, and that meant the country foods. Country food is a staple that most of the communities rely on, and so we needed a way to actually prolong it and maybe get a service or something going. So we did get a meat and fish processing mobile unit brought into the community. We got some more funding from ITI to do a business plan, operational plan, and financial plan. But because of certain things, we still haven't been able to get operational just yet. We need an organization that will take it on. It requires a lot of work and a lot of care, so that's something we're still working on. The garden, I'm just going to speak on it very quickly because a lot of talk was done on the gardens over yesterday's presentations, and there is a garden program in Good Hope. Vivian, who is the Economic Development Officer, and oversees a lot of that, but indirectly we do support a lot of that at the Yamoga Land Corporation. Now, annual geese hunts harvesting program and the community hunts are something that Yamoga also funds through RRC or through the Kashubian Charter Community Council. The annual geese harvesting program is something that Good Hope does. I'm not too sure about how the other communities conduct theirs, but we traditionally used to just take out on the land, on the river, on the ice in the springtime to the islands and harvest geese and bring them back into the community. But over the coming years, that tended to be very risky and dangerous to our members. So we built into one of our business ventures with the Great State Helicopters an agreement that 20 hours of flying time we give it to the community to see how it uses the way it sees fit. And one of them is that they bring out our hunters and harvesters out to the islands to hunt geese during the springtime. And so they bring it back, and a lot of it is distributed, but a lot of it goes into work, and you can see the picture of the dry geese up there. A lot of work goes into preserving and enhancing some of the country meats. This wild geese and the dry geese are really sought after. I mean, a lot of work goes into it, but people really try to get at least a couple of dry geese from people in Good Hope from other communities, and I know it's not really very highly sought after, but a lot of work goes into it, and I wanted to speak on it, but I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll just keep moving on. As you can see, it's all meant to reduce the high cost of food for community members in Fort Good Hope. I'll move on to renewable energy, and this is another item that we thought would lend to the priority of reducing the cost of fuel for homeowners within our community. So much so that when Arctic Energy Alliance came into the community a couple of years ago and were promoting the high efficiency wood stoves and did presentations, the community leaders jumped on it right away, and the instructions to me were to make it happen. So we did do an application where we started partnering up between Yamoga, the Kashubian Charter Community Council, and Arctic Energy Alliance, put a proposal into ENR. We did get funding for 10 wood stoves. Now the criteria for that is a little different than what we would use for Yamoga. Yamoga itself also made a decision to purchase 20 for its own beneficiaries, and so that was also ordered. And the chimneys, the hard pads, and all of the other hardware came afterwards. But there was a very costly endeavor, simply because the barge didn't make it with all of our material, and so it came in after December. We had to scramble to try to get the wood stoves installed before the year end. But to date, all 29 are installed. There was one damage, and we have to send that back and get a replacement, but all of it is installed. Maybe about a month and a half ago, the final one was installed, but to date, I hear that people are really amazed at the efficiency of these wood stoves. You can load it in the morning, you don't have to load it again until nighttime. And so the savings I know are going to be quite substantial. We won't know until maybe next year or the year after what the savings are, but from what we gathered, the information that was presented to us, it's going to be quite a lot. I'm done?
Have you got one more thing?
I've got one more thing.
Quickly,
Okay.
Arthur. Yeah.
I'll move on to small business development. There's 4 areas in small business development that we wanted to bring up. One is the proposed new hotel, arts and crafts, traditional arts and cultural events, and our McKenzie Valley FiberLink project. Now these are kind of linked together because the Fort Good Hope Hotel was something that we found we needed during the economic forum, simply because we needed infrastructure that would promote and enhance the sale and of arts and crafts. And arts and crafts in Good Hope are very sought after. I mean, the quality of it is so very good that even the Nuvik, they have this arts and crafts sale or event that goes on, and they're always trying to get Good Hope ladies that are engaged in the arts and crafts to come. And for the most part, I hear that Good Hope's arts and crafts are the first to go every time, anytime. So, in order to do the arts and crafts, you also need traditional material like moose hides and caribou hides, beaver hides. All of these need to be harvested, and so that's why the Yamuga Land Corporation does the community hunts, so that these items can be harvested. And I'm just going to move on to the next one. You can see a picture of the proposed Fort Good Hope Hotel. There's an old hotel that used to be there, but that's been turned into the cultural center because it shut down the hotel many years ago because of management and financial problems. But you can see the view from here, and that's one of the sites that the new proposed hotel might sit on. It's quite a view. It's from the top of the hill where the old school used to be. I'll move on to arts and crafts, and again you can see the mitts that are there. The sale of mitts, mucklucks, parkies, all of the sewing items are in very high demand, and so you need to get the material to actually do this. And so when the community hunts do happen, you can see that even currently as we speak, there's a traditional and cultural camp that's established where they're actually doing the moose hide programs. They're actually processing moose hides and teaching the young and the old are together, and they're actually doing the moose hide program right now, the tanning program. Now I want to conclude with the final item, which is I'm going to be speaking on, is the education and training. And you can see a number of things that we've classified below that. And that was brought on because we undertook an adventure with Ledcor, who's constructing the McKenzie Valley FiberLink project on behalf of the GNWT. And last year we did some business dealings with them, and one of the things that we found was that there's huge gaps, and we identified those gaps. For this year, we're going to be doing plans to try to close out those gaps, and so that we can actually improve and enhance a lot of the training that we need before next year. Those are the training that we did last year. The Class 1 drivers training, Yamoga funded 10 people. It made advertisement for 10 individuals that could take the Class 1 drivers training in Edmonton. Of those 10 that took it, 7 are now completed. They've completed their training. They've been certified, qualified, and they also have licenses for the Class 1. So those are all ready to go. Some are already employed. We need safety training, and so we've done a lot of that. The Enform Level 1 Chainsaw Training Certificate also, because of this project, we've been able to identify huge gaps in areas that we work with companies. They have a standard, and you have to meet those standards if you're gonna be allowed to work on their work sites. And that's why we've had that. But through all of this, we just wanted to bring about that it was all meant to reduce the cost of living for many of our members. I'm sorry, I've got that's it for
pulling you
time.
off. Thank you, Arthur. much. I'm sorry to be pressuring you. We're going to hear from Andrew Cassidy in Hay River via Skype. So, Andrew, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're going to turn you up.
Just get him talking.
Yeah, you guys are gonna have to play with the volumes.
He's not wearing headphones.
Andrew,
Can you put headphones on?
Yes.
do you have a set of headphones you can use? Because what's happening is your Skype is picking up like the room sound and it's automatically turning itself down.
Okay. How's that?
Should be working. Keep talking.
Yeah, is that better now? Is that better now?
Yeah. No?
No, we don't hear you at all.
Can you guys hear me now?
Muted it. No. We're
I can hear you guys again.
okay. Yeah, there's still a little bit of an issue with the level of the signal that we're getting.
If his headphones don't have a mic, they're not going to help much.
Keep talking, Andrew. Keep talking.
Okay, well, just let me know when you guys want me to start here. I hope this isn't counting for my time. Okay, well, you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Alrighty. So are we good to go then?
Yeah, we're good to go.
That's
Thanks,
the
Andrew.
director saying rolling. Okay, so, good morning. Before I get into my discussion, I would like to quickly thank our hosts and our organizers, Dennis Bevington and Bob Bromley, have long been known as champions for sustainable living, and it's great to see our federal and territorial leaders acknowledging not what I would describe as an issue, but I would say is more of an opportunity. Then they've taken the next step, working together with other partner organizations to begin gathering ideas, developing solutions to strengthen our communities. I'd also like to thank Ecology North and Lutra Associates, who worked incredibly hard to gather everyone together, even if we're not in the same room, and even if I have to wear my big headphones to this presentation. But I can see you guys, and that's better than what I was anticipating. So just a very quick introduction. My name is Andrew Cassidy. I'm currently the mayor for the town of Hay River, and I've previously served as the executive director for the Territorial Farmers Association. What was left out of my bio is that I'm a professional forester with a somewhat active consulting firm, and a market gardener on our family-run farm. In fact, this morning I was scrambling as I tried to figure out where to take the call. Our home office is full of 3-week-old baby chicks, and it was pretty noisy in there. So anyway, my roots in the renewable resource sector run deep, and I'm incredibly passionate about the sector, all aspects of it, from forestry to agriculture, fishing, all aspects of tourism, and even the emerging wildcrafting market. The summer's going to be a big mushroom year. The timing of this gathering is perfect. Based on the agenda, it hits on many areas vital to all aspects of community wellness. When I was preparing for today, I was reviewing the Sustainable NWT Communities Survey and was inspired by the following quote. With the inherent ingenuity of traditional cultures and northern approaches, combined with communications capacities we hold, Northerners also have enormous opportunities to pursue their lives in ways that meet these challenges, achieving their full potential as individuals, contributing to healthier families and vibrant communities. And this is pretty exciting stuff, and I do get excited about this topic. So in order to stay on track and keep my promise to be allotted time limit, more or less, I'm going to, like Arthur, I'm going to try and focus on 2 main themes. The first is what I consider to be perhaps one of the most powerful ways that local governments can inspire, to build, to facilitate, and to support local economies. And the second segment is going to be centered around the Northern Farm Training Institute. I realize that Jackie Milne is probably going to spend far more time speaking about this amazing project, so I'm going to keep my comments focused at the municipal government level, the process that we took, and even some of the pitfalls and the challenges that went along with that project. When I was first invited to speak, I thought of the typical municipal approaches to stimulate investment and strengthen our local economies. That's tax incentives, special economic zones, other land and zoning combinations designed to stimulate or encourage investment. However, I've chosen to focus on another opportunity, one that occurs frequently, often poorly, but is an incredibly rewarding and valuable tool for community governments. Using just a quick show of hands, how many people in the audience have heard of the Northwest Territories Association of Communities? Okay, good. Well, I see you can hear me. So it's good that a few hands went up there. The NWTAC recently held their annual general meeting, and the theme of the meeting was My Community Matters. Now, that was a pretty awesome theme. Interestingly, a significant component of the workshop sessions focused on the various partnerships and their ultimate achievements, to the extent that MACA and the NWTAC had a joint session on the first morning titled Celebrating Partnerships. So in case you haven't guessed it by now, this morning I plan to talk about the power of partnerships. I believe that the more often municipal government partners with individual organizations or other levels of government, the stronger the entire community will become. Our communities are full of innovative, talented individuals, often with great ideas, full of enthusiasm, and occasionally access to resources, either financial or human resources, that would otherwise be unavailable to community governments. I have two quick examples from Hay River. Both are recreation-based. Now, I realize these are not specific to building local economies, but they do contribute to local well-being, which is as important, if not more so. So last year, we saw the opening of our first community skateboard park in Hay River. This project was driven by a user group, well, the parents of the users, that developed the initial plan, the budget, and even went on to secure over half of the required funding. The town was approached to assist in identifying a suitable location for the site and then for matching dollars. Basically, our town has a brand new, very popular outdoor recreation area that cost us 50-cent dollars, and the time that it took to meet with the user groups, to understand their requirements, to understand what the different roles were, and that was it. It was simple. The other example I have involves the twinning of a centrally located baseball field. This is another project that was initiated by the user groups when they were looking for solutions to the challenge of utilizing and scheduling league games and tournaments at the existing fields that were spread throughout our community, often being maintained at different standards. Their goal was to centralize the primary field and add additional capacity to their sporting events. This required a little more involvement with the municipal government, as it needed public consultation, there was some engineering work, and then a significant amount of work or resources to build the field. Mayor Hayek will get this, somewhere between, the backyard ball field and Fenway Park. So again, at the end of the project, our community now has a great new asset. We have the ability to host larger tournaments, our user groups are happy, and it cost the town 50-cent dollars, and then the effort it took to work with the other organizations. I say that's a pretty significant payback. Now, these two examples are pretty straightforward, with both projects having clear end results and easily defined roles between the project partners. It's not always this easy, and I've got one more example to demonstrate the potential complexities of partnerships before I get into the agriculture discussion. Henry Ford once said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." So coming together, keeping together, and working together, it sounds very, very simple, but it's not. Partnerships require work. They require understanding, and most importantly, they require communication. There are often expectations that may or may not be clear. They may not even be realistic. So like any relationship, the most successful and the strongest partnerships are the ones that have stood the test of time, ones that have weathered a few storms and survived. Both partners clearly understand their role, and they know the objectives for the outcomes of the partnership. The town of Hay River and the town of Fort Smith recently submitted a joint bid to host the 2018 Arctic Winter Games. Alone, neither community had the capacity or the venues to even consider taking on this challenge, but together we felt we could demonstrate that we do have the capacity, we have the spirit, and the enthusiasm in the South Slave to not only host the games, but to create a very unique experience for all the participants. We established a bid committee with representatives from both communities to prepare the submission. However, this is when the roles and the involvement of the different communities became more of a challenge. Right up until the final document was submitted, there was a lot of back and forth between the communities to ensure that fair representation was there and that it was a true partnership and that was in fact at play. It was tough. It was very tough. In fact, there was a phone call between myself and the mayor of Fort Smith at one point where we actually discussed whether or not we could pull it off and work together, or whether we should withdraw from the bid process altogether. We persevered, and in the end, it was absolutely worth it. The South Slave was awarded the 2018 Arctic Winter Games. Now, the partnership is still evolving. It's still going to require a lot of effort. In fact, we're having a joint council meeting tomorrow in Fort Smith to discuss the next steps, but it has already demonstrated what can be accomplished by working together. It's been 40 years since the games have been held in the South Slave, and we're very excited to bring it back. So finally, I'll roll into the example of partnerships between the town of Hay River and the Northern Farm Training Institute. Just a quick bit of a background though. Conventional agriculture has a rich history in the Northwest Territories going back decades to when the mission sites grew gardens to support entire communities. While the convenience of grocery stores and modern transportation has taken away that requirement to grow your own foods, there is still a lot of knowledge and interest in this activity. But the knowledge is slipping away. So in 2012, the Territorial Farmers Association began an ambitious project to capture and share the local knowledge while introducing new tools and techniques that would ultimately lead to stronger, more food-secure communities. The idea was to teach using a hands-on approach and in partnership with people actively involved in food production, processing, and preservation. So not in a classroom per se, but actually meeting the farmers, meeting the cooks. I'm sure many people in the room are aware of the NICTI project today, mainly because of its future campus that is currently under construction. However, most people are probably not aware that the educational component of NICTI is already in its third season of implementation. A number of Northerners, not quite hundreds, but that's the goal, from across the territory have now had the opportunity to visit farmers, cooks at their homes and places of work to see firsthand and experience firsthand the process involved with growing food from start to finish. Now this is an excellent start, but the TFA was ultimately looking for a permanent location for an institute that would facilitate ongoing learning, research, and demonstrate the potential for the agriculture sector in the Northwest Territories. Enter the town of Hay River. After recently completing our first ever local agriculture strategy and demonstrating our commitment to ongoing support for our community gardens, the town of Hay River seemed like a natural partner in the Northern Farm Training Institute. With that, and I think we had a piece of prime real estate within our municipal boundaries. It was already zoned for agriculture, but basically derelict for nearly 20 years. So I'm sure the TFA thought that, hey, you know, this cheap land, let's get them involved. So, still under the umbrella of the Territorial Farmers Association, an application was submitted to CanNor that included many project partners like the Rural Research Institute, Ag North, the town. It outlined the long-term vision and put forward a tentative operating plan and a budget. There's a saying, shoot for the stars, at the very least you'll hit the moon. Well, this application hit the stars. CanNor approved the project with a budget of $2 million over 2 years. And this is an exciting announcement to be sure. Unfortunately, this is where things began to take a bit of a turn. The proposal included a rough concept for the campus, but the exact location and the campus details were not fully fleshed out. This was optimistically going to be developed in partnership with the town and the new NICTI board if CanNor approved the project. Well, funny enough, that derelict piece of land was vacant for nearly 2 decades, immediately became something of value to the town, and by town I mean the council and the administration. We began to calculate land pricing, lot sizes, tax benefits, and all kinds of additional revenue. This is going to be a gold mine. To further complicate matters, the town of Hay River was identified as the administrative partner and the signatory on the CanNor agreement. Therefore, the monies were going to flow through the town to the NICTI Association in theory. This has proved to be not as straightforward as hoped due to the various legislations, reporting requirements, and the overall bureaucracy that comes with any level of government. Purchasing and hiring policies were brought into question. Insurance and liability concerns needed to be addressed. All legitimate from a community standpoint, but all incredibly frustrating for a not-for-profit organization that had just secured $2 million from the Government of Canada and now had to invest additional time and energy to ensure comfort and understanding at the local level in order to proceed with the project. Enter Jackie Mill. After many difficult meetings, both public and in camera, with council as a whole, with individual councillors, and with our administration, the NICTI board has now secured access to the entire Northern Fork property, all 260 acres, for the next 10 years under a lease agreement with the town of Hay River. We've worked through 3 rounds of funding transfers, and now the project is moving ahead more or less smoothly. So it was a lot of work, but I think at the end of the day, we have a project here that we're all very, very proud of. The impacts of the Northern Farm Training Institute will have on Hay River and the territory as a whole cannot be overstated. This institution is already internationally recognized. This model of teaching is so cutting edge that only a handful of similar institutes exist in North America. Most of them have a very high tuition fee and long wait lists. We've opened the door for opportunity in Hay River to be a catalyst for local food security across the north at the local level, at the territorial level, nationally, and even internationally, because we're talking about some circumpolar agriculture initiatives that have never been seen before. Again, it was very, very hard work, but the end result clearly shows that it was worth the effort. So just to quickly wrap up here, I've given a few examples highlighting the power of partnerships. And there are many, many more that I could speak to, not just from Hay River, but across the territory, from music festivals to farmers markets to community kitchens. A lot of them have a very, very common theme. Grassroots organizers with a dream or a vision that is truly based on the improvement of community life through recreation, arts, lifestyle, and even economic development. Municipal governments need to embrace partnerships. We need to work at them. We need to practice them at all levels. The more we engage in partnerships as a local government, the easier the process becomes. The more successful our partnerships are, the more frequently they'll take place. And that in the essence, or that is the essence of community. Individuals working together with a common goal for community growth and improvement. So that was my speech for today. Thank you very much for listening.
Your succinct, straightforward presentation. We're going to set up for Mark Hike next, but we have a minute or two while we've got you online. If anyone has a burning question for Mayor Cassidy. Christina, can you speak loudly so Andrew can hear you, or into the
No,
where's the mic?
no, speak loudly. Yeah, speak loudly.
Speak loudly.
Oh, yeah? Oh, okay. Andrew, thanks. That was really informative. I just wondered if you could reflect on the importance. You just, at the end, you talked about enter Jackie Milne, ... and the importance of a champion in terms of stewarding a process and a partnership.
Yeah, I think that that's a very, very important element to my discussion this morning. I did have that in my earlier version, was having a community champion. We have community gardens in Hay River that again was a grassroots championed by Jackie Milne again. But often you have one or two people in the community that have an idea. They may not have all the resources, the capacity to take it through the full implementation. But if they're able to get a hold of the right people, whether it's other government officials, whether it's different levels of government, things can happen, really, really happen. So community champions, every community has many, many champions, and I would just encourage them, foster their ideas and their dreams, and work with them. When you see these successes happening in communities, that inspires other people with ideas, that allows, or that builds up the confidence for people to come forward with even more initiatives. And again, that just starts to snowball everything.
Good. Thank you very much, Andrew. And I think was there one more question, or did I think we're going to let you go and get back to your chickens. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
A good weekend, and you'll be hearing from us as we produce a report on the gathering.
Great, well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And now we go to Mayor Mark Hike, Yellowknife, and take it away, Mark.
Wait, thank you very much, Lois. Keep microphones on. Keep going. Keep going.
A little closer.
No, don't move it closer.
Don't move it at
Just
all.
talk, just talk.
How's that?
Keep going.
Anything?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. We're on. The feedback?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to start by thanking our hosts, MLA Bob Bromley and our Member of Parliament, Dennis Bevington. It's wonderful to be here to speak with you a little bit about some of the initiatives that the City of Yellowknife has undertaken to support our local economy in the last 2.5 years. I'd like to recognize Rich McIntosh, who works for our Economic Development Department, and Rich will be clicking through a few slides in the deck, and I'll kind of branch off from some of the presentation into some other topics that come to mind on things we're working on right now. I also want to mention that from the overall view of a local government's role in the local economy, I appreciated what Diana had to say earlier this morning about community well-being and the foundation of a good quality of life in a community being absolutely critical to a successful and strong local economy. I would end up speaking longer than Arthur did if I got into all of the things the city does to maintain proper infrastructure and make sure we have an adequate, affordable supply of housing, for example. But there are innumerable things that local governments do in their communities that really lead to strong local economies. I'll start out by saying that early on in this term of City Council, Council identified the local economy as a high priority for our term of office. So one of the first things we undertook was to create an economic development strategy that would take a look at the local economy, where our strengths were, where our weaknesses were, where our opportunities and challenges, and how could we move ahead on some of those things. So the economic development strategy, a couple items that came out of that I'll highlight and get into a little bit more further on through the presentation. One of the first things it recommended was that we put more emphasis on the tourism industry as part of our local economy. And so I'll speak a little bit more about that, because it recommended that we actually develop an entire strategy around tourism for Yellowknife specifically. One of the other things that it recommended was really pushing for better accessibility to higher education in Yellowknife. We have a college here that is bursting at the seams in its current location, excuse me, and really can't grow and prosper and benefit the community like it should in its current form. And that's a huge challenge for us. It's not something that's directly within the responsibility of the municipality, unfortunately. It requires partnerships with the territorial government, but it is a situation that we find ourselves in. One of the other things, and again, Diana alluded to this, and I understand it was brought up in some of yesterday's presentations too, is the importance of spending locally. And that's become a huge challenge for communities probably around the world, but we should certainly see it in spades here with the growth of online shopping and the ability of people to purchase goods and services from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. So the city has undertaken over the last 2 years several Shop Local campaigns of different forms. We've used social media to help promote those campaigns and to spread the word. People can use the hashtag ShopYK on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we've included contests and campaigns that will award prizes to people who are talking about shopping locally. We promoted dine out campaigns where we encourage people to get to locally owned and operated restaurants in Yellowknife. And most recently, and actually currently, we have a campaign called Be a Tourist in Your Own Town. And it's been hugely popular. And it involves a book of coupons that you can pick up at either City Hall or the Northern Frontier Visitors Center. And it encourages people to get out to different businesses and venues in Yellowknife. And there's some great coupons in there. So that runs until June 5th, I believe it is, Richard. And people can check that out and take advantage of some of the deals in there. And there's also a contest at the end of it with the grand prize of a trip to a fishing lodge I believe it's on Great Slave, somewhere in the vicinity of the region. So that's some of the Shop Local campaigns that we've been trying to keep our dollars here in the community. On the tourism side, we followed up our economic development strategy that was adopted by Council in 2013 with the creation of a tourism development strategy in 2014. And one of the, we've seen incredible growth, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, in the tourism numbers here in Yellowknife. Not only Aurora tourism, but in the shoulder seasons where we used to not see a lot of tourists in spring and fall, we're now seeing more and more people coming. With the bridge over the Mackenzie River, we're seeing more RV traffic in the summertime. And to the credit of the private sector and the tourism sector here in Yellowknife, they have significantly built up their tourism infrastructure. It's remarkable to go to Aurora Village today and to see how much it's changed in the last decade and what a fantastic venue that is, and that's just one example. But there's a number of other businesses in town that have really picked up the ball and ran with it in terms of giving tourists things to do while they're here. We do note that spending by tourists is highest in the business tourism sector. So people who come for conferences, meetings, AGMs, things of that nature, they spend more than your average tourist does. So we've been looking and trying to work with the tourism sector on increasing opportunities to bring conferences here. And one of the ways that we'd like to do that, we work closely with Tourism NWT, which has recently launched a convention marketing bureau with great effect so far. And actually, Andrew Cassidy would be aware that the National Egg Farmers Association is going to be holding their annual conference in Yellowknife in 2016, which is quite a sizable conference. They had looked actually at doing something in Hay River, but Hay River doesn't have the facility, so they'll be coming to Yellowknife instead. And I've been making this joke a lot, but I have to do it again. We're going to exceed their expectations. So to that end, we're looking at creating a destination marketing organization for Yellowknife specifically, because NWT Tourism has a territory-wide mandate, and so we recognize that their job is to promote the entire Northwest Territories, while our job is to promote Yellowknife. So we'll be undertaking the research to do that over the next several months, and hopefully be able to reach out to more organizations. And Yellowknife really has become something of an exotic locale for national organizations wanting to find a location for their AGMs. And we've seen more and more of that in the last 4 to 5 years, so we hope to grow on that. On the energy front, and I know this has been a big topic of conversation here, I wanted to mention a couple things, because Yellowknife has a very strong track record of energy planning and renewable energy use, and really deriving our energy from sources that are becoming closer and closer to this community. And I want to mention, it's kind of funny that when I was on council in my first term, 2003 to 2006, the first administrative inquiry I asked at a meeting was about when we were going to get our community energy plan started, when we were going to start working on it. And I was actually prompted to ask that question by Mr. Bromley prior to his days as an MLA, so we've come full circle. But we have had a great deal of success, and the city has moved towards biomass for its space heating needs in a big, big way. We started out with our community arena, swimming pool, and curling rink, and wood pellet boiler being hooked up to that, but we've now expanded that to several other facilities to the point where we have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 33% since the adoption of that plan about 8 years ago. Internally, we've been very successful, but with the broader community, we still have some work to do. So we're at the point now where we're renewing our community energy plan. And one of the things that we've determined is we need to look outward to the community to see how we can help our residents and businesses with their energy needs. And one of the ways that we're contemplating doing that, we've just completed a feasibility study that we worked on with the Pembina Institute, is the use of local improvement charges to foster renewable energy use in homes and businesses. And the way that's done, and the way it's been done in other places, is that a municipality or a community government will finance, and actually Shauna Morgan's here, Shauna worked on that feasibility study for us. But a municipality will finance, for example, an energy efficiency retrofit or renewable energy technology for a resident, and they will pay that investment back through their property taxes. So it's a very low-risk proposition, because if you don't pay your property taxes, we will auction off your house. So there's virtually no risk to it for the municipality. And it's been quite successful in many of the communities that have tried this. Halifax is a recent example with their Solar City project, where the municipality of Halifax bought 1,000 solar hot water heaters, and then residents could get those solar hot water heaters and pay for them over a term of a certain number of years through their property taxes. So the investment stays with the property, and so we're considering that as an option. There are territorial legislative impediments, which MLA Bromley has helped us with previously as well, and the Cities, Towns and Villages Act, which governs the city, would need to be amended, but there's a review of that legislation planned for the next assembly, so we're optimistic that we can get some of those changes. On the food and agriculture side, certainly I think much of what you've heard already and what you will hear throughout the presentations is the importance of local food production. And certainly the success of the farmers market in the last 2 years is a clear indication that there's a growing appetite, no pun intended, for locally produced foods here in Yellowknife. And we're very much looking forward to June 2nd when I get to ring the bell for the first farmers market of the season. But it's a clear indication that sector of the economy is ripe for growth. Again, I'm not even doing the puns on purpose. But we've also seen, preceding the growth of the farmers market, we've seen incredible growth in community gardens throughout Yellowknife. About a decade ago, there would have been one community garden along Cam Lake Road. Now we probably have a half dozen or more, with plans for more coming along all the time. To the point now where the city, when we do our planning for a new subdivision, we actually set aside space within those subdivisions for a future community garden. The most recent example of that is in the Niven Lake subdivision, where along Moyle Drive there's a community garden being built there. So there's definitely, and I think it's kind of a renewal, because we did see a lot of agriculture throughout Yellowknife's history, but in recent years less so. But it's coming back in a big way. And there is interest in the community in actually creating an agricultural plan for Yellowknife, something that Hay River already has. But to better plan out future land use, which of course local governments have direct control over, so that we might actually see some commercial agriculture down the road here in Yellowknife. Mining. It's interesting when we talk about local economies, and Yellowknife got its start because of mining. That's why we're here. The two gold mines were founded in the 1930s. That's how this community as we know it got its start. We don't have those anymore, but we do have to be cognizant of the economic benefits that mining in other locations, such as the diamond mines, bring to this community. So one of the things that our economic development strategy sought to do was to look at the gaps in services that this community could provide to those diamond mines. Even though they are several hundred kilometers away from us, there is still a benefit to this community economically and an opportunity to grow businesses. And that's been one of the remarkable things since the diamond mines came along, was the growth, particularly in First Nations owned businesses that have serviced those mines. So while those mines are in operation for the next 15 or 20 years, we want to derive as much economic benefit as possible from them and help grow businesses here in Yellowknife servicing those places. Lastly, I'll just speak quickly about something that one of our councillors has been very keen to see implemented here in Yellowknife, and it relates to downtown revitalization, which is a big priority for our council and for the city of Yellowknife. And a couple of weeks ago we had some engagement sessions around the 50-50 lot and 50th Street in particular. But it's as everybody here knows, our downtown has been in a bit of a downward spiral for several years now. And so we are strongly focused on what we can do to bring businesses and people and residents back to the downtown core. Some of that does involve tax incentives, but one of the concepts we've been looking at are business improvement districts, where the geographic part of the business community will actually come together as an association, and they can go to the city and say, we would like a special surtax put on our property taxes, but that tax will go to the association that they can then use for improvements in their part of the business community. And this is something that it's not novel. It's been done virtually every city across Canada, but it is something new for us. And so we're actually I believe it's next week, Rich. We've got, if you go on the city's website, anybody who's interested in learning more, we do have a noon hour and an evening information session on those. Some people in the room may remember Ellie Sassville, who was a former executive director of the Chamber of Commerce here in Yellowknife. Ellie now lives in Edmonton and is the executive director of a business improvement district there. So we're bringing Ellie back up to share her experience with this model with some business members here in Yellowknife. So that'll be happening next week, and you can find more information on that. On our website. I better stop there before Lois starts.
I'm standing up.
Oh, you are. Okay. So those are some of the initiatives that we've undertaken in the last several years, and we hope to see more of these things roll out in the years ahead to support the local economy here in Yellowknife. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Danny Bea from Delaunay. Stepping in at the last minute, much appreciated, Danny.
Thank you. Yeah, this is some surprise for me, so we're going to have to wing it. Hope you can have an understanding. Thank you. This is, I thank the sponsors for doing this thing. This conference allows people to get together, allows people to communicate. It's funny, somehow I think more you communicate through internet and texting, the less you really communicate. It's kind of something else. anyhow, my name is Danny Bay. I am on the Denali Lands Corporation. I'm the vice president. I've been a few years. And I'm also on different boards. But right now, on the hat I have on will be for the Denali Land Corporation as vice president. And as Arthur earlier has given a bit of an introduction of where the land claims are set up and how it's set up, we have a similar role. We have similar mandates as well. So I want to thank him again to fill in some of the things. And some of the things that he's facing and the community is facing is the same things in our community as well, because in Sauk too we have similar cost of living is high, issues with fuel costs, groceries, self-sufficiency is an issue, but we have opportunities. I really don't want to sort of stay away from the word challenges. I want to say opportunities. I think we need to have that idea of giving that, communicate the opportunities that exist in our communities. We should talk about positive things rather than negative, and so that we don't get bogged down in talking about negatives over and over again. So I would ask that we do more positive things, or try to think more positive things. And I just want to pick up on what Arthur said earlier about the family. A lot of us think about how we are, the way of being, self-sufficiency, of how we want to be as independent as we can, our families independent as we can. A lot of us learn this from our parents, our grandparents. So I really want to keep that idea front and center when we try to get the whole thing about our children. What are they learning? What are we saying to them? Rather than, we have to also show them how we live. So I think there's that opportunity for us to do that. But before I go on too far, I want to introduce Tommy. Tommy is also a board member of the Denali Land Corporation. He's with me here, as well as Christine, our executive director. Christine first. So I just want to, there's so much we could probably talk about, but we only have so many minutes,
yeah,
right?
About 10 minutes. About
okay.
10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes. So I just want to get a bit on the Denali Lands Corporation. A few years ago, we did a business strategy, and one of the main things I think the community has training is one key aspect of where we want to go. So we're trying to be very supportive. We have scholarships for our community, bursaries for our beneficiaries that we have. And not only that as well, we also want to try to address the high cost of living. It's a real concern about the young people. It's impossible, as far as I'm concerned, for a young family to support themselves in Denali if you are living on a paycheck. We will have the economic development that the other communities may have, like mines or oil and gas, but we are, in a sense, struggling too as well. And again, going back to the whole idea of communicating our values and what it means to be out back in the land. I know Denali is big on out in land projects. I know the other communities are as well. So I think we really need to have that, and we do have those projects, and we're thankful to the government and sponsor agencies to give us funding to help them do that, as well as the lands corporations themselves have tried to support that type of initiatives for our community members to do that. And so it's funny, some people, we always talk about land projects, but we really talk about the benefits of land projects. We see it, but we can't measure it. We see the long-term effects, long-term positive impacts of having out in the land projects. For number one, it's just very obvious, is it takes you away from, it brings you back to reality. What it means, really basically, you just have to be out there and really do the things that makes you survive on your own. You don't need the internet, you don't need the phones, you don't need the power to be out there and survive. It's very simple. It brings you back to reality. So I think it's a really helpful tool, and the elders have always said that. They've always talked about going back on the land, and that's one of the key ways of trying to think self-sufficiency. I know Denali is going to be hopefully having some issues. Well, we're getting close to the end of self-government. I'm not the best person to talk about self-government, but I know the people that negotiated, they told us that I think June, if things go well, we may have the final agreement in place, the official. So we were hopeful, but it's another tool to try to gain some level of self-sufficiency for our community. And I'm glad that's happened. You know, there's barriers that we try to move away from. For example, the land use plan has been done a few years. It allows a roadmap for economic development, allows different worlds, different worldviews, different cultures to work together. I think it's a positive thing as well. So, and the other thing that we want to do, we would like to do, and I think the other thing is important, is the issue of our land use plan itself. In our community, we have, with self-government, I think they're trying, once it's in place, we're going to try to have a local plan, and that includes tourism. When we talk about small business, I know Arthur and Mark mentioned about the tourism. But again, tourism, we have some initiatives and some support from the local government, and as well as the SSI, or ITI from Norman Wells. They're sponsoring some programs for us and helping us in cooperation. It's a collaborative effort between the community as well as the government organization. So we're really thankful for that happening. I know if you go on the website called Destination Delaney, would be something that to check out, and that'll be helpful. It allows people to, and folks that want to see the community on the whole. So I just want to say that. But the other thing we are also doing, and I think there's a mine development, or there's an opportunity. I don't know if some of you are aware of that. There used to be a mine called Silver Bear Mine years ago. It used to be Terra Mines years ago, but it's abandoned now, and it's under. There's possibility of remediation. So the community is looking at that as well, whether we can feasibly do that work of remediating. As well, there might be opportunity there for joint partnership, and we've been working on that for a while. The community's been in there for a bit. As well, there's also our issue with the community itself. We're doing a few other conferences. There's also on the bigger projects front, we are, the community has been talking about run-of-the-river type of hydro. So they've been talking about it and working on feasibility studies. I know we're in that stage right now. I think we're completing the community feasibility studies. It's going to be done pretty sure this summer, whether this is going to be working. And the community is really anxious about the results. So that's the other thing that's happening. Again, going back to the self-sufficiency and the reason for people to go in business. When we go into business, people think, well, it's a lot of it to do with profit-driven. Really, in a community, a small community, I don't think profit-driven is a good thing. It should be itself, in the end of the day, the purpose of the business is for employment, for the common good. Really, in the end of the day, that would be a good thing, because if you go into business if everybody can compete in a community of Delaney, for example, there's no way a business will survive. It would collapse. So, in a sense, that would be something that I think the community is working on, setting up those type of corporations. So, I know we don't have much time on some of this stuff, so I want to leave with you the fact that we are trying to move towards more community-based businesses. I know Arthur mentioned Moose Hand tiny projects. That could be a helpful thing that allows the young mothers, grandmothers to pass on skills, values, about when they do that kind of work. The other thing is great is berry picking. Berry picking is great for young mothers and young families, young grandmothers to go and talk to and create that, reconnect with their children and young grandchildren. So it's an opportunity there. So, but I just wanted to mention again, it's the encouragement of folks to go back to their roots and say, really, how can I make a difference? And we have to start with ourselves. And if we do it with ourselves, it goes a long ways, because what we say here today may be forgotten a month from now. And if we keep it alive in our children, as 10 generations down, it's going to be there again. So I think we need to have that discussion more and more, but I really encourage that we have more of this type of conference where we have real communication. And so I'm glad I had an opportunity to say a few words, of which I wasn't really prepared, but I hope it made sense.
You did amazing.
Thank you.
When you're speaking from the heart, it's pretty easy. You don't have to have that preparation. Masucho, thank you. We've got a few minutes here for questions. Diana.
I have one for Arthur, but it might be also for Jenny. You mentioned that you'd had some feasibility studies, some investment in some business planning, but that you hadn't been able to then yet launch the business itself. And I was just wondering if you could talk about what some of those challenges are. Thanks very much for your presentation, by the way. It's been great.
I think you're ready to go on the mics.
Check.
Sorry. My fault.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did the feasibility study on the hotel. Now, some of the stuff that they mentioned in there, and one being the challenges of tourism. You need to draw in customers. There's bed nights that need to be met. There's also the question of the restaurant that's attached. You need to have that as a standalone entity, because sometimes it's always good to have a restaurant and everything, but sometimes you have to be cost effective in how you manage a business like a restaurant and a hotel. Now the other stuff is that the training and jobs are also available in the hotel business, but attached to that, you have to actually think about the cost of bringing in food, and you can't always do it from the store, so too costly, and the transportation of food and goods are another item that we need to overcome. The third part is that you need to decide what kind of a hotel would best suit the community. You have your modular, you have your stick-built custom design, which will run somewhere around $1 million. So you need to have a very good business plan just in order to make it work. And we are looking at all of those options right now. One of the things that why a hotel was so important was that you need to get an economy going. And I know we worked with ITI several years ago, and they run us through all of their programs and what money is available. One of the areas that really interests us was the traditional economy, hunting and trapping and harvesting. ITI and ENR has stated right from the start that every dollar they invest in the traditional economy, they're receiving about $7 return to the economy, every dollar they invest. And I believe that, because even in the arts and crafts, and I mentioned the moose hide tanning, the moose hides are so much in demand that even $1,000 is not enough. But there's things that the challenges there are that the old values are still there too. Women's and especially daughters, they work hard on these moose hides, and it's really hard for them to part with it. They rather use the moose hides on their own families and so on. So there has to be a way to make it work, and we're trying to determine how best to do that, those kind of things. But as I said, the arts and crafts need to be marketed, and the only way you can market is to bring in tourism, but you also need the infrastructure for tourism. Several years ago we did have, like we had outfitters, but there was local outfitters, and they their business has just is on a downturn. I think the whole economic downturn played a major role in the amount of tourism that we received. But I think these are areas that we need to look at again, because tourism is something that we're interested in, but we realize that we need to partner up with other communities in the Sahtu to be able to make it work. You need to put a package together that each of these communities have a tourism attraction, but by ourselves we cannot do it. We need to partner up with other communities to make it work.
Well, thank you. Danny, did you want to weigh in on this? And France, your question.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Hello. Okay. Very good. The barriers. There's so many to mention, but it's opportunities. Again, it's for us to say, yeah, maybe we need to do something in the area. But I mean, two things that we really struggling with, and I think probably the other communities as well, is the fact of the workforce. Earlier, I think Diana put issues of workforce, and it is a real concern in our communities. Capacity building is key in front and center. Education, that's why we're trying to support training of all sorts, and support for our beneficiaries to get the best education that they can. And that's one of the key things about the whole issue of self-government and how we can deliver the best curriculum we can in our communities. I think that's, at least in Delaware, that's what we're hoping to have happen. And Arthur talked about partnerships. One of the key things is arranging partnerships and trying to get partnerships so that all parties can see clearly. And again, communication is key. Again, we need to get that face-to-face, more of that happening. Cost of fuel is crazy in the communities. That's why the community has been talking about a bit on the hydro side of things. That will help alleviate maybe the cost of electricity in our communities. It's continually going up, never is going down, hardly, as well as the cost of fuel, diesel fuel in our community for vehicles and stuff. So building anything, larger projects, it's a challenge. Because of that, it's an opportunity for us to be very creative and try to do other ways. And one of the ways they're talking about, at least the vision of creating this hydro project, or try to do the hydro project, even the mine, is trying to do it in phases, so it's manageable, small. And that allows people to, if it's too big, the workforce is going to be, we don't have the workforce right now to do some of that, so we have to start investing in our young children. And a lot of these projects that we're talking about 20 years. So once we do that right now, we invest in our 1-year-old or 2-year-old going to a kindergarten, it's a start. And by 20 years, they're ready to be part of this workforce. And so I think right now, that the other thing is that Arthur mentioned the partnership. The community's got to really have that partnership arrangement. And again, but the cost of living in each community is just incredible. It's just impossible. A young family, there is no way. I mean, without real support from outside as well as the local folks, and without real jobs in the community, such as mine or elsewhere, it becomes a very issues for our communities. Thank you.
France has a question, and Doug has a question, and I think it's time for a break. Sorry.
Ms. Mark, you mentioned the possibility of an agriculture plan for Yellowknife, and I know right now Legion of UT is developing a territorial strategy. There's a consultation meeting in Yellowknife on Tuesday, and I'm wondering, are there any links? Is the city going to participate in that, or is the city willing or eager to do a standalone agriculture plan for?
Yeah, I think what we would, and I think I got an email about that yesterday, but I had a lot of emails coming in yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to get back to the person. Certainly, I think our planning department will want to be involved in the territorial strategy, but as with most territorial strategies, they tend to be fairly broad in scope and not really drill into the details that this community would need. So I think we probably, as a local government, have a better sense of what our development and growth potential is for the next 10 to 20 years, and we can better identify where those potential spaces could fall. So to answer your question, yes, we'll be involved with the territorial strategy, but we'd still likely create something standalone for you.
Thank you. Doug.
For Arthur, I know this community does a lot of traditional harvesting, but I was just wondering,
You have the meat processing facility, but why have you not been able to use it?
Again, when we did the business plan and the feasibility study at the beginning of it, we always thought that it would be a really good idea to sort of get into, but when we took the business plan, the operational plans, we found that there was the source for all of the wild fish and probably the wild meat. They're there, but the quotas are not established. Like maybe back in the 80s there were quotas, and those things are still there, but they're not up to date. The other thing is that if you're going to make a meat and fish processing plant work, you need to actually get service, and you need to get paid for the butchers and the people that handle the food. They need to be paid somehow, and it has to be done as a business. But right now, you still have the food safety guidelines to go by. You need somebody trained in that. You need a manager that actually can run this food processing. But because it's only built for summer, the time in which you can do the meat in the winter, you need a garage or some other infrastructure to place the operations in. But the thing that most stands out is that you need, if you're going to export products, you need an inspector, food inspector in place to actually do that for you, and that's the other problem. I mean, to actually get all of this in place, you need a whole lot of work, you need a whole lot of people to actually do it. Now I know that Delana has been in the fishing business for many years, but I don't think they have that in place as well. So those are the things that we're running up against, and you need to actually have somebody researching out a lot of this, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy and money to actually do this. And so we need a follow-up plan on the fish and meat processing plant, and you actually need an organization that can actually run it too.
Good, thank you. A hand for this panel. I know you're having questions, but there are another bunch of speakers, and I don't want to cut into their time. 2 points. We've got 2 questions on the back, flip charts, and I asked people to put up a sticky in response to those 2 questions. We have a tablet over here that we would like you to come to and take a look at the motions that are there and cast a vote.
Can I make one quick comment?
Quick comment, Larry, very quick, because we're taking a break.
Okay. Well, I would like to encourage your community to work towards sustainability of self-sufficient, get your community self-sufficient and sustainable among all your people, and governance will happen automatically, and also these business plans will happen automatically in the future. You keep the education, but I think it's really important to get the community united and to stay self-sufficient and sustainable.
Thank you. We're taking a 15, I guess about a 10-minute break actually, and back at 1:45. And then we're going to hear from some dynamic people about well-being. Sorry,
Government.